if you look at the American dream, if you want to call it that, everyone wants to get out from the man, if you want to say it that, and they want to start their own business. Well, they see, he's making X amount of dollars off of this invoice. Well, they're not understanding that there's insurance, there's repair and maintenance on the trucks, there's overhead, there's all these extra sort of hidden costs that they don't see, but you have on there. I mean, anyone that has a brick and mortar or even just works out of their truck, they should know what they have to bring in that month to just cover the bills.
Well, Ken, thank you so much for joining me today. We'll start off nice and easy. Can you just introduce yourself with your name and your title?
So my name is Ken Throckmorton. I am the owner of Forever Fence and Rail here in Wadsworth, Ohio, small suburb south of Cleveland, west of Akron. I am also the 2026 AFA president.
Perfect. So tell me a little bit about your background. How did you get into the fence industry?
Well, I live in a small town where you sneeze within 3 minutes, someone across town says "Gesundheit." I used to be a chef in my prior life. And so, I had my first son and came home and he cried like I was the biggest stranger in the world. And I had to make a decision. Being a chef, you're working 90 plus hours a week, weekends, holidays, really no life. And so I had to make a decision. Do I want a family life or do I want a work life? And so I made that decision, and a small fence company in town heard about it and asked me to be a salesman. I said, I don't know anything about fencing. And here we are later.
That's amazing. So talk to me about those early days. Like once you first made, obviously going from being a chef to being in the fence business is a big shift. You are basically starting from scratch in terms of knowledge. So what were those early days like for you as you kind of got your feet under you?
Well, I mean, I've always been a little bit hands-on, being able to, handyman type thing, build things and do stuff like that. Never great, but, you could do stuff. And so, when I got hired on, they said, hey, go to this job, measure it, prepare a quote. And it was for ornamental aluminum fence job. And when I came back, it was, and this is 2006, I'm like, this is $10,000. I'm freaking out that like I did something wrong. And, they looked at, yep, send it off. Well, I found out later that the job was pretty much sold. They just needed to find details. But still, it flipped me out. I'm used to, back then it was expensive to have a $40 steak, and so I'm looking at a $10,000 fence, and I'm like, ooh, what are people thinking? But now it's, second nature.
Yeah, absolutely. That must be such like a mind trip, frankly, to be like, oh, people are pressed about, a dinner out, $40 steak is what they consider a splurge or like a luxury. And then over here, there's companies dropping tens of thousands of dollars on sales. And it really just like kind of shows the difference in budget, but also like the difference in opportunity for yourself as a entrepreneur then.
Right. And I was working for another fence company, but still it was eye-opening.
Absolutely. So tell me about how you started your own company. How did you make the shift there?
So the other company, obviously, when 2007, 2008, the fall happened, one day they closed their company and opened it as a different name type of thing. And there was some handshake agreements, not really handshake agreements, that after so many years, it would be mine. When that time came, it was not what was promised. They wanted me to cover some of the debt and do this. And, they sort of screwed up because they hired me as a 1099. We didn't have a contract or anything. So, after doing some investigation, talking with people, talking to a couple of suppliers, I started my own. And, that was 2014 in August. And, giving the hand over the phone and a couple things back to them, like you're making a big, you're not making a right decision. You're going to fail and blah, blah, blah. And I wanted to send a thank you card on my 10th anniversary of my business, but my wife wouldn't let me to say, hey, thanks for the words of encouragement. So, because in the back of your head, you're like, no, I'm going to succeed because they said I wasn't going to succeed. Meanwhile, they closed their doors 2-3 months after I left. They had a couple jobs that I had sold and they finished them up and then they were done.
Gotcha. That's so interesting too. I think when you get told like, oh, you're not going to succeed, or you have somebody be a naysayer against you, it's just like, I'm going to show you. I have that much more like fuel to my fire now to show you up. And not only because I want to do it, but because I kind of want to prove you wrong.
Yeah, and it was, I've since seen this, and I've since given this to friends. Is when they get ready to start their own journey, I reference Steve Harvey does the world famous jump video where yeah, you're going to fall on the way down, but if you succeed, you're going to catch that chute and come back up. And that was not out when I did my thing, but I look into that a lot and say, yep, that's what you got to do.
Absolutely. So give me the lay of the land of Forever Fence and Rail. Like how many folks do you employ? What areas do you service? Yeah, just tell me about it.
So we mainly try to stick in Medina County as our local county here. We do go around, the greater Cleveland area, Akron, with our installs. And, we'll install ornamental vinyl, wood, chain link, not too much of the wood and chain link. We really are the residential vinyl and ornamental. We do the wood and the chain link. This time of year right now, we've been so wet that it's hard to get into people's backyards, but we have the 2 fence crews and a carpenter crew. We do a lot of railing. We actually have a lot of fence companies that recommend to us railing. So we just take care of that. And then we also have a wholesale side where we're a big wholesaler for Homeland vinyl products. And then some of the other products we carry, we wholesale also to some of the smaller fence companies.
Awesome. Also, I know that this year you are the president of the AFA. So tell me a little bit about that. How long have you been a member of the AFA, and how did you get to be president for this year?
So when I first started my business in 2004, August of 2014, I had heard about Fence Tech, and one of my mentors, Michael Kalinich, who is a past president of AFA, really said that I should get involved and join and go. And so 2015, I went to my very first Fence Tech in Orlando. And, there's a story that, those in the industry know. Tony Thornton came up to me. I was in the back corner, little kid type of thing. Like, he's like, hi, I'm Tony Thornton, executive director AFA. And, he has his little Southern twang to him. But, and I was like, wow, I'm just nobody from Ohio. And he came up and said something to me. So I've used that moving forward. If I see someone in the corner, I know what that feeling is. I try to shake their hand. But joined that, went to some schooling in 16, AFA University. And then it was 17. The Michael Kalinich and Tom Poland, another past president of our chapter, not AFA, but our chapter, suggested I be the chapter president. So from 17 to 19, I was a chapter president, or 20. I was a chapter president. And then those chapter presidents voted me in as the chair of the chapter presidents. And then I've moved my way up through the board, being a treasurer and board member. And, and then here we are today.
That's awesome. So give me the lay of the land of what your duties look like as president of the AFA. Like what is in your remit? What are you looking after? And what can people expect under your leadership as well?
So we have a great board with the AFA, and we have great chapter leadership. And, our chapters are a community or a committee that works very well and brings us to the local hands-on type things. And then we as a board, we have a strategic plan put in place where we are, what's best for the members and some of the vendors or suppliers that help us out. And so we put all that together. Obviously, I had some duties at Fence Tech this year. We run a monthly board meeting every month with the board. We have an executive committee meeting, which is our president-elect, myself as the president, our past president, our treasurer, our secretary. We meet basically 2 weeks after our board meeting. And so we're constantly having a meeting. The executive director and I meet every week. We have a set time on Thursday where we discuss things. And that's not the only time. And we do talk throughout the week. But, if it's one of those things like the world's not on fire, it can wait, I'll put it on my list for Thursday type of thing. But things pop up, members call, my phone is constantly ringing now. You know, some of the past presidents recently have been vendors or suppliers or bigger fence companies that sometimes people are afraid to talk to. I've always been I'm the fencer out there. I'm a small guy just like you, and so a lot of people feel that they can reach out and ask me questions. And so sometimes it's some simple answers. Sometimes it makes me think, but we have things in place, and we just changed our mission statement to the AFA unites the industry to build community, develop leaders, and inspire growth. So there's a couple different groups out there, fence associations, groups, and stuff like that, and we're here to unite everyone. So we do like doing that. And it doesn't matter, if you're a small guy, big guy, medium guy, and I say guy in general terms, but we're here to help. We have education programs throughout the United States. We have our online learning system with the American Fence Association. So we have different things out there, certifications that some states require you have to have for gate safety and stuff like that. We're really working with the Ready, Set, Save group, who used to be the Hummingbird Alliance. Unfortunately, they lost their son Alex to a gate accident. And so we're trying to help get the standards changed for not only motorized gates, but manual gates. And we've made some great strides. It was just introduced in Congress as a what's the word but a common sense. That's what it is. A common sense potential law. There could be some simple things that cost almost nothing to do, less than a half-hour labor time. It could make these gates fail-proof if the hinge or something fails. So, we knew about Alex's accident, and then a year later, there was a young girl in Arizona that had the same thing. And so everyone heard about that, and it's like, ugh, because as a fencer, some of us have kids. And so you think about that. Is that my kid? Or, if you installed that gate, you don't want that guilty conscience either. So we're really pushing that safety. And, it really sort of burns me a little bit when some people are like, we don't need codes or things put in place. Well, we also need to have properly installed gates and other items put in place. So, it's one of those that, I think it's a good thing that we're doing right now.
Yeah, definitely. Codes and standards for industries are basically for safety, right? Like 99% of people out there are very well-intentioned and have a really good quality of labor and a really good work ethic. But of course, there's that 1% of people that is going to be a little bit slapdash. But I think that protects everybody, right? So that nobody's kid or nobody's family member is going to be in one of these extremely unfortunate situations. So that's really cool. I'm excited to see where that legislation goes, and hopefully it does become a law. That'd be amazing.
Yeah. And, when you get in this day and age, when you get Congress people that are on this side of the aisle, on this side of the aisle, and they both say, this is common sense, let's move forward with it. That's a good feeling, because at the end of the day, they have grandkids, they have kids, they know what it's like.
Exactly. We're all a little bit more alike than I think we are. And when you see people agree like that, it gives you a little bit more faith in the world. So that's awesome to see. I want to shift gears now a little bit and just talk about your career in the fence industry over the last 20 years. Obviously, you've been in this business a long time. So what are some of the biggest changes that you've seen over the course of your career?
Well, I think colors, I'll start with that. In chain link, you really had black and brown, a little bit of green. Now there's so many different vibrant colors you can get. Sure, it's a setup fee and all that with some of your chain link manufacturers, but you can get some pretty awesome looking chain link colors. Some of the designs, the Chain Link Manufacturer Association holds a Les Gruby Award every year, and it's really for an architect and then the installer. And some of these designs that you see that aren't just the straight 6 foot with three strands of barbed wire. It's curved. It's this segment this way and this segment that way. So some of the designs are cool. And then you get into the wood and you see horizontal, and you see, you can see some real great carpentry work when it comes to these wood fence. And then just alone in vinyl, I personally stock 9 different colors of vinyl. When I first started, it was white and tan, and you were lucky if you had Adobe. Um, and then the powder coating, you know, I personally use Digger Specialties, and they have 12 standard colors of powder coating. So it used to be black and bronze, and that was it when it came to ornamental aluminum. So to have 12 different choices out there, and the customers, we all joke about it that, oh, the housewife has looked at Pinterest and they want this. Some of those are still unattainable. I don't, AI must have created them, but some of them are attainable. And, to be able to help a homeowner that has that vision bring it to life is always something good. And, bringing that to 20 years is you have the AI, you have the social medias, you know, oh, I saw this fence in Wisconsin. I want this fence here in Ohio. Okay, let's see what we can do.
Definitely. That the seasonality or like climate aspect is really important as well. Like, are there different trends that you noticed, either from, calls that you get from other AFA members of, I'm really seeing this trending in this part of the country or anything like that?
Yep. Yeah, and it's fun. It's good to hear because sometimes you'll have, there's a buddy of mine that posts on, I'm on a couple fence Snapchat groups, believe it or not, but the guy's kicking the dirt and he's like, we're dry, 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 and I'm like, I want to go post a video of me walking through a 3-foot deep mud puddle because we're nothing but wet. So it's amazing to see the different parts of the country, the different techniques. We go to these different competitions or these different forums or these, different rivalry weeks or whatever. And you go and you see these people and, there's competition, but after that competition, you walk the line and you look, well, why'd you do that? And they tell you, and, that's always fun to go around the United States and see.
Absolutely. The fence industry as a whole also just has so many like niches that you can go into. You can be a completely commercial shop. You can be a residential shop. You can focus on ag fencing. You can focus on industrial fencing. Is there one of those areas that you are seeing a lot of growth in right now? And also, do you think one of those markets is underserved and potentially a place where folks could focus?
Well, I think you're seeing, with fuel the price it is right now. You're seeing where people, one aspect may slow down where someone will grab another. And I think that's part of the one nice thing about AFA is we do have these different trainings throughout the United States. We have our big AFA university in November. But when we do the fence installation school, we go through all five disciplines: the wood, the chain link, the ornamental, which is steel and aluminum, wood, chain link, vinyl, and then ag. And so a lot of times those people that have never touched ag before, like, well, that's not that bad. I didn't realize I could actually do that. And more people are, coming out to the suburbs and building a ranch. They think it's a ranch. It's a 2-acre parcel. But, some of the true ag guys don't want to mess with a small fence like that. They want to do miles of fence. And so, for everyone to pick that up and help out, I think that's something that's starting to happen because everyone's going to get ponies and they do all these things. I laugh because I've recently been watching Matt Matthews and his farm chores on YouTube, and he has chickens, he has horses, and I'm there watching the video. I'm like, man, look at that roll on that fence. Whoever did that was great. And so, I look at that, but it's people are starting to do that more in ag. The other thing that we're starting to see is coming out of the city, we're starting to see more and more multifamily homes. And so technically that could be commercial because you're having the builder help you do the divider fences and the perimeter fences. But, it's also residential. So, you are starting to see that's one of the bigger building products out there anymore is a multifamily home. Communities are, these 2-3 apartment buildings, if you want to call it that, are putting swimming pools in. So you got to have the proper fence for that. It's just, you got to be careful because if you're residential, you're used to the payment right after the job, but you switch over to these commercial jobs and sometimes you are waiting 90 days for that payment. So you got to have that mindset, know what you're going into.
Exactly. It's such a different ball game sometimes, even just jumping from residential to commercial, and just the payment terms are a massive one because if you don't have the cash flow to be able to sustain that gap till you get paid, that definitely is like a big thorn in your side as a business owner.
Right.
You
And
mentioned,
a lot of times they're not going to give you a down payment. So you're having
Mhm.
to get the material, hopefully be able to pay for the terms, because you're not, typically your supplier is not giving you the terms that you're getting from the manufacturer.
yes.
So
Exactly. And you mentioned fuel prices, but also it's lumber prices, it's, steel and aluminum prices. A lot of these things are fluctuating and have been fluctuating for the last 12 to 18 months. So you might sell a job at a certain price thinking your materials are going to be this much. And then if you do not buy your materials right then and there and you buy them a couple weeks later, you're dealing with, completely different material costs than you thought you were going
yeah, and
to.
that happens a lot with commercial because they're planning a job out a year and a half in advance.
Hmm.
And so they're asking for the quotes and doing that. And if you don't word it a certain way, they will take your quote from back then prices, not now prices. And it's still sometimes hard, even if you do word it a certain way, it's still hard to fight for that price.
Exactly. What's your advice to folks that are dealing with that right now? Like people who feel like they're getting their margins cut out from under them because of the volatility in the market.
Well, I mean, I'll be honest, I didn't know what force majeure was until COVID really happened. I mean, I always heard it, but I didn't know what it meant. And, these are some trying times. And so I think you have that relationship with an attorney, you have that relationship with those general contractors, your banker, and your suppliers, even that you go through and figure these things out and be open and talk about it. I had a fencer tell me, you're not an attorney, but you know common sense. So go through that contract and redline it. You don't have to accept it. One of the first things that they told me is if you're doing the job in Cleveland, Ohio, and say they're a firm from Chicago, Illinois, look at the arbitration clause. If the arbitration clause says we're going to Vegas, no, you're giving them a free vacation. So that should be one of the first things. And then if you see that, then you really need to deep dive in to what else are they trying to hide in there. And we do a legal class in a couple of our operation managers and contractor business school. So we do some of these things, and it's one of those things. Is it 100% fail proof? No, but for that new fencer going through schools and an eye opening thing, it's worth it.
Definitely. Because I think a lot of fence pros that start their own businesses, they are experts on the technical side of it. They know their product inside and out. They know their installation inside and out. It's the business piece of it that's maybe overlooked, right? Like you don't necessarily think you have to run your business like a business. And what I mean by that is you just kind of think you're going to go out there, install some fence and make money doing it, which yes, you are, but there's also the hiring and retention side of things. There's making sure that your margins are fueling your business growth. There's the cash flow side of things. There's a lot of different aspects that probably are coming as a surprise to the brand new fencer. And as much knowledge as, that there is right now out there on the internet, there's a lot of like conflicting advice, right? Because you might not know what knowledge is the right advice to follow. You might follow some bad advice. And it definitely is really useful to have an organization like the AFA be like, no, this is knowledge and expertise that is like tried and tested. And we're going to be able to provide that to you as like a reliable resource.
If you look at the American dream, if you want to call it that, everyone wants to get out from the man, if you want to say it that, and they want to start their own business. Well, they see, he's making X amount of dollars off of this invoice. Well, they're not understanding that there's insurance, there's repair and maintenance on the trucks, there's overhead, there's all these extra sort of hidden costs that they don't see, but you have on there. I mean, anyone that has a brick and mortar or even just works out of their truck, they should know what they have to bring in that month to just cover the bills, let alone cover the materials they just use, pay yourself if you're just a one-man band. Everything, it does add up.
Definitely. I want to talk about the like labor side of it for a second as well, because I think hiring and retention and like getting a team under you that is going to be a team that you can rely on, that you can actually have to grow your business is a big one. Because initially, I'm sure it's like, oh, I'm going to hire my buddies. I know folks. I'm just going to, get them into my business. But as you become a bigger and bigger operation, there definitely is like the corporatization, if that's a word, right? You have to have regimented training programs, and you need to be able to vet folks before you bring them in. So what have you heard from your members so far on the like labor side of things?
Well, I like how you started off by saying team, because I hear employees and I'm like, I think, okay, they're number 1372 or whatever that number is, but they are a true team. And, you want them, they know they're part of the team and they know you're a friend, but when it comes time to following the rules, they know they got to do that too. But we have, we're just rolling out our fence foreman school. We're actually going to have this May 12th in Ohio. I don't know when this is going to air, but and so that's our very first fence foreman school, and that's how to help run a team, organize, and a small individual team being part of the bigger team. We have an operations manager school that talks about what to look for, and unfortunately, if you have it's sad, but if you have like a C employee that shows up but really doesn't help with everything, and yeah, they show up, but how much is it ruining the morale of everyone else because they're just sitting there doing something, not the full effort. These are things you got to look at, and it's never fun to let someone go, but you got to make sure what's best for you and your team. If they don't like, we'll just say Johnny for an example, that Johnny just shows up. He holds the post hole diggers instead of using them, or maybe he'll do a little bit of this, but not a lot of that. Is it really worth it for the rest of the team to deal with that? 9 times out of 10, when you talk to your team and say, hey, if we get rid of Johnny, I'm not going to have anyone for 2 weeks, they're going to be like, we'll take care of it because we do it anyhow. They're going to be happier.
Honestly, it creates a lot of like friction and like just not good sentiment on the team, right? Because then they're like, that guy's not really, he's trying 50%. Why am I trying 110? Why am I going above and beyond? Because I have a good work ethic and I care about my job. All right, fine. I'm going to lower my output to maybe 75%. And then that cascades across the team. And then you just have a big problem on your hands.
And the support, you try to give them little handouts or, something I do personally is, my kids were in 4-H, and so we buy animals to fill our freezer, and so we'll buy an animal and split it up between the team, and they love that they're getting ground beef and steak and whatever else, and they're that's a benefit to them. So and it's maybe we'll go to a baseball game for it might not be the majors, might be a AA team, but they have a thing where you can go in the first base outfield and they have a little picnic out there and the kids can run around after the game. Typically we go on a fireworks night. So it's just a little something extra to give back to the guys and gals.
Exactly. It's all about appreciation. And, work, I think, is one of the last places that we have community that's like baked in. Like, I think if you rewinded to our grandparents' generation, there's all these like different communities, whether that was like through your religion or church or through school community PTAs, or, these days, a lot of people don't even know their neighbors. Whereas, 50 years used to know everybody on your block and everybody used to be chatting to each other. And a lot of that has like pulled away as we come into modern times. And
hey, but that's helped the fence industry put little fences in between.
True. You're like, I hate my neighbor. I don't want to see them.
Well, that's funny. It's because we hear that I hate my neighbor. Be careful. They're going to come off. They're going to yell at you. You never have a problem with that. It's when I'm good friends with them. If you walk on their yard, no problem. Well, then all of a sudden you put a fence up. They're cussing you out as an installer. Like, whoa, why? What's going on? And so those are little, you can tell when a fence is going up and for a reason, and a fence is not going up for a reason sometimes with customers out there.
Yeah, definitely. You're getting into the neighborhood gossip at that point. Looking forward a little bit, how have you found the process of attracting like younger folks into the fencing industry? Like, are there different challenges that you're seeing, or what's that process been like for you all?
Well, I mean, I saw something on social media today. You used to send the kids outside to work and play and have fun. Now you're just giving the kid an iPad and put them in the corner, and then they're wondering why their attention span's 10 seconds. And so, I think I like to find kids that have been on teams before that have that team mentality, that they practice, they know what it takes to make it happen. It's just not going to there it is. You know, um, I personally like on my side, it's finding the 4-H kids and stuff like that that know how to work the farm and know what a hard day's worth of work is. Um, but you get some people that you shake their hand and their hand feels baby soft, and you're like, they've never worked a day in their life. And some of those guys are actually really good. So,
Do you find that you have like different methods of having to attract them into these fence companies, or they want something different out of the job than maybe a generation back?
well, the thing I found is, um, and it's not trying to deceive anyone, but if you work, X amount of hours and get paid X amount of hours, maybe you'd put, if you work 40 hours a week for 52 weeks, you're going to make X amount of dollars. Sometimes those kids are like, ooh, that's a lot of money. They don't realize. So when you put ads out there and stuff like that, I've tended to do that. Put X amount of dollars a year. That really, money's everything still. I mean, it grabs people. Um, but the chances of them working, kids calling off, you got to be flexible with some of these people. Family comes first here. So if you got a kid has a banquet or a graduation, we'll take care of it. We're in the industry where if you need to change the schedule a little bit, you can do that. Customer per customer. We're not where you work 9 to 5. It has to, so many things have to be done in a day. And you can adjust your lead times when you go out to that next customer. So it's nothing that you want to really push that far off, because when you get into lead times over 6 weeks, it's customers tend to have a little fit, like, oh, I need it sooner, and they'll look elsewhere. So you got to be careful about that, but you can change it. And most of the time, like the weather we've been having here in Ohio this year with all the rain, they understand. And then the first day they have, Sunday, like, hey, when you coming? I'm like, did you go out in your yard today? Well, yeah. I'm like, did you sink in? Yeah, it was over my shoes. I'm like, and you want a 3,500 a pound bobcat in your backyard? Yeah, why don't you wait for a little bit?
Yeah, exactly. Puts it into perspective. On that note, though, have you seen consumer expectations or tastes shift over your career as well? Like, is there anything? Are people wanting like more with less? Are they sort of like wanting things faster? There's definitely a culture of like instant gratification these days.
Well, I mean, this no dig, I don't know if it's a craze because it's been happening. If you look at guardrail and farm fence, it's been happening years upon years upon years. But the no dig with more residential, with social media, they're searching fence, and you know you might see this guy out there with a pounder pounding fence, and they're asking about that, and so you got to give them the pluses and the pros and the cons. But there is pros and cons to everything, even the old style fence we've done. So you give them that, and sometimes they appreciate that and want to move forward. But yeah, they're doing their homework a lot more. You can AI and Copilot and Gemini and all that. It might not be the 100% correct answer, but it's a majority of a correct answer.
Definitely. On the note of AI, how have you seen fence businesses incorporate that into their processes? And have you sort of seen like it done really well, and then places where you maybe shouldn't be using AI where it's being used?
Well, I think some of their automatic messaging systems on the websites, some companies are doing AI. Um, there's not, it might not be AI, but there's new programs out there where a customer can draw it on their computer, see their property, draw it out there, get a rough budget number from prices you put in, and they're making a decision even before you physically talk to the person if they want to move forward with you or not. They're not final decision, but the day and age of someone, if they don't do that, saying, "Oh, I thought this was only going to be $3.75 when it was $5,000." I'm being a little extreme, but we've all had that where someone thought, "Oh, it's $1,000 and it's $3,000." Those days are getting to where they're not around anymore, and the tire kickers are sort of gone.
Definitely. I think that's definitely important, right? Like the consumers are educated and they know it goes both ways because they're so educated, you really have to up your game as a business. You need to be across all the latest tools and techniques, and you can't have a conversation with the customer and have the customer maybe know more than you. Like that cannot happen. So there's definitely an extra layer of pressure to be upkeeping with whatever is trending or hot or cool on social media that consumers might be into.
And I think too, part of it is because more and more people actually have more fence companies out in that area. You got to tell them what the feature and the benefit of your fence is, and how you do your fence, because competition has almost the same type of fence. So what is the difference? How you need to spend a little more time. And we all joke that during COVID, everyone was stuck at home. They just wanted a fence for privacy. They didn't want to talk to their neighbors, safety and health. And so we were more order takers because people call me, I need this. I have 200 some odd feet because they've already gotten 5 quotes. I need this and I need it done now. We're slowing down enough from that COVID craze that you now have to go back to selling fences. You're not being an order taker. And so you got to tell them that, yes, my bottom rail, my vinyl fence has a reinforcement in it. And we do have side channels. So it's a true privacy fence. So you have to go through these things.
Definitely. On the note of technology in the industry, like what are some of the things that you're seeing AFA members say to you and how they are incorporating technology in their business, and how can it help you grow your business as you go forward as well?
Well, you have three, more than three, but you have a lot of these CRMs that are now almost 100% fence based. Before, you would take a CRM from a roofing company or something like that and try to turn it into a fencing CRM. And now that some of these that are actually, fence based, it's making it easier. You can have it where you send a quote and you move their name to quote sent, and depending on how you set it up, you can say 3 days later, send them a text. Hey, I sent you an email. If you haven't received it, check your spam. And guess what? I didn't have to lift a finger, and that customer was found. And I don't know how many times. Sometimes my email's gone to spam, and it's saved me. Because other times you get a call before you had a CRM. Well, I never got an email. Well, you go back. Well, yeah, I sent it this day. Well, I don't have it. Well, check spam. Oh, okay. So it's one of those things that it can automate a lot of work for you. That it's a free employee. I mean, yes, you're paying for your CRM, but texting, email, reminders. Sometimes a customer will get an email quote and they're waiting on 2 or 3 others, and 10 days later you send them an email and you're like, you know what? I haven't got anything from anyone else. Maybe I just do need to use them. So I think a lot of these technologies are helping the industry.
Definitely. The speed is really important, right? Because I think a customer that's out there looking for a company, they want it done quickly, and there's a lot more hesitation to wait these days. They're like, all right, I got this first guy in my inbox, the price is fine, I'm going to roll with it. And that's as simple as that. So it's really important to be able to be quick off the bat as soon as you're able to visit with a customer, quote them, and send them a price. How are you seeing folks that are maybe a little bit more old fashioned? I know that a lot of our customers have come onto ArcSite with from pen and paper, a spreadsheet, some sort of like slightly more old fashioned method. And that's partly because they need to be up with that speed. But I know that there's a lot of folks out there still that love the pen and paper vibe and they love the spreadsheet vibe. So have you seen that like technology adoption change over the past few years?
I think just the emails and the pictures you can send, and some people have it where you can sort of draw it out on their yard and they can see what it looks like in their yard. And just having line drawings and just different helping, it's the features and benefits. So it's that little bit extra that really can help them out. I still laugh to myself when I'm at a customer's house and they may be a little bit elderly, and can I have your email address? Oh, I don't email. You need to mail it to me. And it's like, whoa, I haven't mailed a contract, and it seems like I get one per quarter that I'm like, okay, yeah, we got to do that.
I want to shift gears now a little bit and talk about some of the things that the AFA offers to its members. Why is AFA membership so important for the Fence Pro in 2026?
Well, I think, you know, like we talked about our mission statement before, we do unite the industry. Um, we develop leaders, we inspire growth. These are all things that everyone wants to do. And so if you think, hey, I'm going to be a one man band in my pickup truck and install X amount of fences the rest of my life, if you're happy with that, fine. Maybe with some of our member savings benefits, you can get a fuel card and save some money there. You can get some shirts through different company there. You can get a computer and save some money. So we do have our member savings program, and it does. It's with anything. You get what you put into it. So if you just say get a membership to put it on the side of your truck, and I'm an AFA member, and you don't do anything, is it worth it? Because you're putting your name on a logo, basically. You're not getting what you want. We now have a meta locator on our website for any of our members. So if you're in a town and they know that American Fence Association is a good association, they can go to our website and go type in, so many miles from my house, who's all the fence people? We actually do put some of our certified professionals above others because they've done the certification processes. But that's another good thing. The learning, the different classes we do offer, you're always learning, so that's good. And then, the groups, when we go to Fence Tech, and when we have the AFA University, it's those people that get together after the event, and I'll call it the watering hole of the hotels or something like that. There's more learning done when those group of fencers are together, because you may have a fencer that's wearing jeans and a dirty shirt and some dirty cowboy boots that has 12 locations and runs 100 crews, and you wouldn't know it by looking at this person talking to a guy that works out of his truck. And just maybe the little bit of this or that hint, it helps that person grow. And so those are the fun times I like to see being involved with, and then sometimes just standing back and watching it happen also. As the president, I try to go to a lot of the different association chapter events and everything and meet people out throughout the United States. And doing the education I've taught for years, I've been able to go around the United States and see things. And so it is fun to see that happen. And, I'm horrible with names and I apologize to that, but I can remember face and I'd be like, oh yeah, you and I were in Sacramento 3-4 years ago. And they're like, yeah. And so I couldn't remember their name to save their life, but I know where we would teach in class and they learned something. And that's the other thing. You get some of these old time fencers that my boss made me go, and I've been doing this 20 years and I don't know what the hell I'm doing here. And about an hour and a half into the class, you say something and you can see them like, oh, I got it. And so that's the other thing I like seeing too.
Exactly. It's the light bulb moment. And that's always so gratifying, right? Because we all want to feel like we've helped somebody at the end of the day, no matter what business you're in or what role you're in. You want to feel like you've made an impact. So,
I've been lucky enough to meet a lot of people. You see all these signs, Hawaii, Alaska. I mean, I've been lucky enough to meet a lot of people in this industry. And so it's always fun. And that's the other thing too is, sometimes you may be a little bit nervous to talk to your neighbor fence company. That is he going to tell me the right thing or is he going to tell me something wrong so I fail, but he gets the job. But if you can pick up the phone and call someone in a different state and say, hey, I got this going on, and like, oh yeah, I did this last week, here's what I did, it helps.
Definitely. One of the things you said earlier is that, there's a certain level of approachability with you as president, because in the past there's been like larger heads of larger operations. So what are some of the calls that you feel like you get over the last few months? Like, is there any theme or trend that you're seeing that you get calls on the most?
No, I mean, unfortunately, we just had a fencer lose his wife at a young age with some heart issues. And just 2 days ago, 3 different fence companies went together and helped finish a job that he had contracted. And those are his competition, but they came together, got it done. He lost his wife at 30 some odd years old. He's 30 some odd years old. They have a 6-year-old and a 1-year-old. Stuff like that. The industry gets together and helps each other out. One of our past employees used to call AFA a family, because if you look at the first three letters and then add, the family part, and it's true because we've had people with, there'll be an article coming out here shortly in the Fence Post that I wrote sort of about this whole situation where some people have cancer, some people have situations just happened, and it's one of those that we all bond together. We all feel the pain and move forward to helping each other out.
That's really important these days. I think there's like less of that happening in work, right? You always feel like you have to keep your personal life separate, but like it's just not the case, right? If you lose a family member, you lose your spouse, somebody is quite ill in your family, like that is going to affect everything in your life. There's no way that you can compartmentalize that and just go about business as usual. So that's really heartening to see. Like you're able to get community through the AFA and you're able to get that like family atmosphere, basically, like you're saying.
And that is the first two words of our mission statement: build community. And I think we've done a really good job at that. The other thing is it's one of those that you can help each other out. Locally, it used to be you never talk to your competition. Now, during the work week, you may not talk to your competition, but in the evenings or nighttime or even a chapter event, you're buddies with them. And it's even to the point where, hey, I'm in your backyard, basically. I need a tension band. Instead of me driving a half hour back to my shop to get a tension band, yeah, come on over, because what happens if I need a flat cap next week and I'm in his backyard? It's a give or take, and you understand that. It used to be button heads. No, you can't do that. But we're all in it for the same thing.
Exactly. It's like, it's that give and take. It's that family to family, community member to community member, just like helping each other out. It like helps you establish a lot more faith in the industry that you're in and also just in humanity a little bit, that people are really just decent at heart, no matter where you go across the country. Lastly, is there one benefit or perk of being an AFA member that you think people are underutilizing?
I think that members savings program, that a lot of people are like, oh, I didn't even know that. But I think a lot of the benefits, and sometimes it costs things, but is a chapter event. Everyone has a chapter and basically in their backyard. Some, yes, you may have to travel a couple hours to get to, but there's golf outings, there's clay shoots, there's fishing groups. There's 2 chapters that are doing fishing events this year. Lots of golf outings, a couple clay shoots. I've already been to 2 just different chapters clay shoots. And then we host one here in Ohio in August that's, I'll pat myself on the back and break my own shoulder, but it's one of the better ones in our industry. Carolinas has a Carolina by the Sea. And then the one thing I always tell people is, if you want to go to the Carolinas by the Sea event, but you're a New York, Long Island chapter member, you're allowed to go. You don't have to, I only stay in my own chapter. They will welcome you with their arms open. And that's the thing I do like about the community. If you go to our website, there for a while, and as a president, you can request things. Doesn't happen a lot, but I sort of stood on my soapbox and said, I hate that our website, you have to click 3 different things to find the events tab. And so finally they put the events tab right on the top. And so you can click on that and you can see the different chapter events. You can see the different national events that are going on. So I do recommend that those people look at those education events, because that's, I posted some, AFA has a community page, and I posted something the other day about our classes. I said, is there ever a good time to train? No, there's never a good time to train, but you got to make time for it. And so if you can look at those events page and try to forecast, our fencers are famous for last minute decisions. And I understand, because you might look at the weather and say, okay, the next 5 days are horrible. Maybe I will go. Or the next 5 days are going to be great. I'm not going now. So that's, I think, one of the underutilized items is different chapter events. Sometimes you go to these chapters and you got 70, 80 people at, and then sometimes you go to them and there's 13 people there. So take advantage of those.
Absolutely. You can have some really meaningful conversations one-on-one
Yeah.
or one to small, and then you have just a lot more insight, right? Like, of course, you'll get a lot of benefit from going to a class or going to one of the bigger events, but like having that like small one-on-one conversations with folks that are in your immediate community is so valuable.
And that's the other thing is some of these suppliers, they sponsor these events, and you may be buying 3 steps through people, and they may not be able to sell you direct, but they can at least put a name to the face and help you out. And you know if you buy from a company through them, they can at least help you out with, okay, here's some literature, here's this or here's that. So it does help you to do those things, even if you can't buy direct with those guys.
Exactly. And then as we wrap up here, my last question for you is there one trend that you're going to be following closely over the next 12 to 18 months?
I think the AI in general and how it's affecting us, that's actually one of our key uh, strategic plan items is that we're watching is the AI and how it affects the industry. Um, it's here. You can't say we're going to wait and see if it's going to happen or not. No, it's here. So we got to see how it's going to affect the industry positively.